I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from central British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people that are watching us from around the world, they say, oh, we know where Canada is, and British Columbia on the west coast, right? Right. And then we are in the center of British Columbia, beautiful, beautiful province with lots of forests, lots of nature, black bears, grizzly bears, caribous, wolves, you name it, we have them all. And today we have a very, very interesting guest. Her name is Kristen Corral. Kristen has a background as a TEDx speaker, an award-winning entrepreneur, co-founder of Tacotarian. I hope I say that right. Acclaimed paint-based Mexican restaurant chains. That's going to be interesting. She was also at one point a showgirl in Las Vegas who tuned passion for animals activism into business in a powerful brand. Kristen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So quite a background, Kristen, all the way from where were you from originally and what was your background? And then obviously you did a lot of stuff, including Las Vegas and then now being into, as I understand it, a restaurant chain that is based, what my wife would say, healthy food. She's a vegetarian.
So. Oh, nice. Well, she would love Tacotarian.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I originally grew up in Orlando, Florida, okay. And I did professional dance, like competitive dance, my whole young adult life. And then I kind of had this dream of being a performer. So I moved to LA for a while, and then I ended up in Las Vegas. I auditioned for a couple of shows. I got them, and I performed here in Las Vegas as a showgirl, as a magician's assistant. I got cut in half every night. I did a ton of, yeah, here in Las Vegas for years and years. I did that for 10 years. I performed on different Las Vegas stages.
Oh my God, that's a long time, Kristen.
Yeah.
10 years. So up to what period? Obviously challenges in Las Vegas during the COVID period, I presume. Was it before that or during? Or
it was well before that. So I moved to Vegas in 2003.
Okay.
And I performed until about 2013. I retired in 2013 from the stage. And that's when I actually started my first business, which was a pet care business. I launched this large-scale pet sitting and dog walking company because I really had no hireable skills. I had no college degree. I had nothing to fall back on. I had no plan B. And I'm terrible at working for other people. Like, nobody wants me to be their employee. So I was like, I have to figure out how to work for myself.
Sounds
so
like
I started a pet care company. Yeah, I know. Most of us who are entrepreneurs are not good employees.
Yeah. But I love animals. We have a couple of dogs, my wife, myself, we have a couple of dogs, and then we got 7 horses, both her and myself. We ride English dressage. We have a place on Vancouver Island. I don't know if you know where that is, or if you have been, Victoria. And so, and I have all kinds of businesses in northern British Columbia. So I'm in northern British Columbia during the week, and then Friday afternoons, I go what I call paradise to Vancouver Island. And so to relax and do things that I like to do, I'm always working. And then we have our horses and we love animals. And then I call it paradise.
I love that. Vancouver Island's nice. I've been one time to Victoria and it was beautiful.
So we bought a property there. And I don't know how did you fly into Victoria then, or did you?
Oh, it was like on a cruise.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So, and obviously cruises are and again, Vancouver Island, very, very popular. So we, about 20 years ago, we bought a property there, and then from there on in, decided, because I'm traveling all over, I do a lot of business in the United States and in the rest of Canada, so it was central located for us. And then at the same time, we wanted to start bought a farm and developed that into 50 acres, and then built a riding arena, and then got all our horses in. It's paradise. So
That's incredible. Yeah. Good for you. I love that.
so take me and us a bit further into, so you did all of that 10 years in Las Vegas, and then from there on in you decided to go where and do what?
So that's when I launched my pet care company. I basically had no money saved and I just was tired of performing. I realized like, this is not what I'm going to do forever. What's my next move? So I kind of found this online program. Well, it wasn't online. I found it online. It was called Animal Massage and Care Certification. So
Okay.
I went to UNLV, which is like an actual, like a university here in Las Vegas, and I
Okay.
got certified in animal massage.
Okay.
And so that's how I started my first business, which was the pet care business, was through animal massage. I started asking all my friends, like, do you need help with your animals? Are you going on vacation? I would just ask everybody. And I just brick by brick added more clients and more clients and more clients until I finally scaled that business to 6 figures. I had 10 employees. And I was able to really start to work on the business and scale it instead of being the actual person who's walking the dogs every day. Like when I started, I taught myself HR, I taught myself payroll, I taught myself how to manage employees, like labor laws, I taught myself marketing, all of these skills because I was just a solopreneur. I had nobody else and I had no college degree, I had nothing and I had to figure it out, right? So I did that from 2011 until I sold that company in 2022. And that company still operates today. It's the largest pet care company in Las Vegas. And it's run by a wonderful woman, Desiree, who's done an incredible job continuing on my legacy. So that's when I got into business with my husband and my two other partners in 2018. And we started Tacotarian, which is the largest Mexican plant-based chain in the US.
So I have, my wife probably knows about it, but Tacotarian, I've not heard about it. So is it based, so you started it in, it did not exist as a chain, but it was here and there. You had, but correct me if I'm
We
wrong.
started our first one in Las Vegas in 2018.
Okay.
So we opened in Las Vegas in 2018, a very small footprint, like 1,500 square feet, just kind of thinking, oh, we'll do this one restaurant and maybe it'll be great. And it just took off. So we opened basically one a year for the next few years. And so now we have 6 locations and we're franchising. So we have some franchisees that are coming online in the next 6 to 8 months. So that will continue to scale across the US.
And that's under the name Tacotarian.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yep.
and so what is it called then? Tacotarian something else, or just?
It's just Tacotarian, but it's technically Tacotarian plant-based Mexican eatery.
Okay.
So we serve 100% plant-based food, but most of our customers are not vegan or vegetarian. They're just people who like really good Mexican food, and ours just happens to be made from plants. So that's kind of been the basis for our success, is that we're not marketing to the 3% of people like your wife and I who identify as vegan or vegetarian, but we're marketing to everybody and serving really good food that everybody can enjoy.
Yeah, the interesting part about that is that you can relate to this, that my wife is vegetarian, and I didn't always listen quite as well as I could and should have in terms of diet. And
Yeah.
so we've been together for about 42 years. And so, but then I got a case of everybody needs a shock every so often. So, and in 2008, when I was 68, I got a case of diverticulitis. I don't know if you're familiar with. And
I
so
am.
I'm not a doc, obviously, or a medical guy, but if it hurts on this side, it could well be your appendix. And then if it is on the other side, people would say that, and the knowledge, it could be diverticulitis, which means, if you go to a doc, likely, and I'm not a doc or a person of medical background, but they would suggest to eat more greens, blah, 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 something along those lines. In my case, it became very serious, very immensely painful in my case, and what had happened, it ruptured, and so the colon, and so I made my way. I was down the coast and on Vancouver Island actually on a Sunday, and I was struggling with it, and I've always been healthy and fit, and so that was very uncommon for me. And then I had to go back to all my companies in northern BC. So I went through the airport, and where I go from one gate to the other would take me about 5 minutes. In this case, it took me half an hour hanging on to the side, and I was ready to go on my knees because they would call the 911, and I had to go back here. So when I came back here, I was well after the 48 hours already, which is the critical part. And when you rupture something like this, and I didn't know what it was, obviously, went to my doc. He said, get to the hospital. Went to the hospital, and they operated on me, and they took 20 centimeters out of my colon. And the doctor following morning said, you came this close. And so that was the message. So from that point forward, I started listening better. My wife being impressed with all of this, so I started to be more careful about my diet. I used to be 80-20, I'm probably more like 90-10 now. And so I did that, and I love it, for one. And then the other part, exercise to me became important. And so, before that, I was just like everybody else does. At the end of the year, we say we're going to do this, that, and the other thing. And the end is we're going to go buy membership to the gym. And that's what we're going to do. And I was one of those. And then 2 weeks later, then you can find 100 reasons why you're too busy to go to the gym. And so, but this time it was different because I knew it was critically important to me, longevity and quality of life, and that I must do that because at the end of the day, that's what it is all about, quality of life. And so I got a trainer because that's how my life works. I usually go from meetings to meetings. I'm not trying to be important, but that's how it works for me. And then, so I got a trainer. That's when I recovered from the operation in 2009. And after I did that for about 6 years with a trainer, somebody came up to us and said, hey, John, have you ever thought about competing? I said, me? Yeah. I said, why not? So, and I did, started get ready for competing, started, first in Northern British Columbia, bodybuilding and physique, came in second bodybuilding, third in physique. That qualified me for the provincials, did the same. And the next thing that qualified me for, in 2018, qualified me for the nationals and the Arnolds. And and I did that. And then obviously COVID came. And that slowed us down a little bit, not on diet and all, but I still was keeping active, but not quite as much in the competing. So now I just turned 85 on November the 1st, 2 Fridays, last Friday or the Friday before.
Wow.
And so now what I do, I'm still going, I'm still training very, very hard. I'm getting ready to compete in the Arnolds in 2026. And I wrote a book about it, Living Young, Dying Old. That's a picture of me, actually.
I love that. Congratulations. That's incredible.
And
so I'm 85.
Yeah. So then, so I'm 90-10 vegetarian and love it. And then going to the gym and saying it's quality of life. And now even at 85, I'm very involved in all the things that I do. I write books, do presentations, podcasting. And not trying to be important, but just to make the point. I have 10 different companies that keep me active. And the other thing that I do, I get up early in the mornings, usually at 5:30, always make my bed and always think I'm late. And that's what I do.
I love that. But you said a key thing, like you're living 90-10, right? So you're 90% plant-based and 10% whatever else. But I think that's kind of where people are moving. I think even the younger generations, they don't want to label themselves. I think the word vegan specifically has kind of become this like polarizing, dirty word for whatever reason. But I think that, and people will argue with me, well, veganism is dying. And my argument is not, veganism is not dying. the actual movement, the actual diet is here, and it's people are living it. But what people are throwing away and casting aside is the labels that we've kind of put on people, because especially younger generations, they don't want to live with labels. They have this kind of fluidity lifestyle, and that's what they're into. So that's why we've kind of stayed away from using that word vegan or vegetarian or whatever. We say plant-based, and we don't rely heavily on that marketing. We more rely heavily on the marketing of, we have really good Mexican food.
And I like that, Kristen. And then the other part I was going to mention, amazingly, can you believe it? I do all the shopping for my wife in terms of groceries. And if I go for both of us, and when I go to the grocery store, I shop and I go at the outside, inside the store, mainly in the greens and stuff that is good for me, because in the aisles, it's all processed or extreme processed food that likely has a lot of stuff in there that's not good for you. And so that's not what they do. I stay on the outside and mainly stay with the greens, and always be very concerned about, where is it from, what is the quality, is it being, all of those things. And it's become a way of life, and I love it. And the point that I was going to make is that, for the same as vegan has that bit of the old school, and that really is going out of use, the word maybe more than anything, but saying plant-based or healthy food much more so. And I'm probably somewhat of an example of that, because I started in saying age. You can start this anytime, and start gradually and enjoy it. It does not have to be food that say, well, then that's not a tasteful diet. It is, and so you will start enjoying it. Between that and physical exercise and all the other things, it is all about quality of life.
It is, absolutely. And I think too, once you kind of start living that lifestyle, you have fun with it, because you have to get more creative. When you just eat meat and you're like, okay, I'm going to put a piece of meat on my plate and like a starch and maybe a green, it's like, I don't know, that's not exciting for me. Like, I'd rather put together these complex meals that involve plants and cooking and lentils and beans and this and that. So for me, it's much more enjoyable, even at home. The way I eat is you get to be more creative.
And timing, and talking again as an entrepreneur, as you are, and with your partners and your husband, entrepreneurs, timing is everything. So, and obviously what you did and I did, and some of the things that I do, is the timing was right when I moved in a certain direction with the companies that I have and the products that we manufacture. And the same for you in terms of it was Tacotarian, it was timing that, again, starting in the right market, probably that was ready for this, Las Vegas, but more so since that time, now it is growing as we speak, for all the reasons that you made the point, and so did I, is that younger people are starting to look at this, being more conscientious of it, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely have a great market here for food in general. I mean, restaurants are huge here. We have a huge restaurant scene. You can get any type of food here, any time of day or night, which is so great. So it's a great test market for kind of different models and different concepts, which has worked out well for us. So actually 5 of our locations are based here, and we recently opened one on the Las Vegas Strip, which was very exciting. But we've proven this works in other cities. We have a location in San Diego, and like I mentioned, we're franchising now. So it will work in any city that has enough of a population. Now, is it going to work in a rural, small little town? Of course not. But any major city could sustain a Tacotarian, and they would do very, very well.
On the other hand, though, Kristen, Canada is very much similar to the United States in terms of what we do and how people live and what they do. Is that, from, if I look back and, in all the years that I've been around, even in business, I've been in business for 50 years with my first company, and then the other ones have followed, but if I look back, even the 50 years, we would, and then going beyond that, growing up, we seldom would go to a restaurant.
Yeah.
Seldom. Where
Yeah.
now that pattern has changed more and more and more. And so, and then the same that I do with my wife, we are very careful which restaurants we go to, has to be following our diet, you know, being plant-based or vegetarian, you know, so, and so we're very, very conscientious of that. But more and more restaurants are opening, and more people become familiar to it and starting to like it. And that's a trend, and again, entrepreneurial. When you came up with the idea of Tacotarian, I like the name, is good, it's catchy, again, very, very unique. And then the key is always, correct me if I'm wrong, you being entrepreneurial, me entrepreneurial, the key is always if you have a good idea and you move it forward. Timing is everything, and growing too fast is not good. It has to be, locations are critically important, and then maintaining management of the label Tacotarian, even if you franchise, critically important to maintain that quality, the style, and the identity of the Tacotarian mark,
Brand.
that people brand, that they know what to expect when they walk into one of your franchisees, if you wish.
Exactly. And that's why we kind of waited so long to do the franchise. You know, we talked a lot about staying corporate, but it's very difficult to expand corporate stores. You have to raise a ton of capital. There's got to be a lot of infrastructure. And it doesn't give people the experience that we had. One of the reasons we decided to franchise was because we had this kind of our own business that reflected our values and something that we loved. And we wanted to give other people that opportunity. And franchising allows that, but it allows them to do it with a proven concept. So there's less risk for them. So that was one of the reasons we decided to franchise. But we're very intentional about the brand, what it has to look like. The tile has to be the same. The furniture has to be the same. The food has to be exactly the same. Like, we're working on producing some of the food internally so that it can be distributed to the other stores. So no matter what Tacotarian you go to in any part of the country or in the world at some point, it will taste exactly the same as every other location you've been to. Because you say Canada is very similar, and we've actually gotten quite a few inquiries from Canadians wanting to franchise in Toronto. So I hope eventually we'll get there, but not yet.
No, but timing is everything. Too fast is not good. Slower is better, but too slow is not good either. But you
Somebody
see
else
that,
will beat
you
to
know
it.
exactly. But the uniqueness that you have, Tacotarian, is catchy, and so as you have that name, then from there on in you can relate to it. Now the other part that comes to mind when interacting with you here is you're a very good communicator, and you are, because you know, and that again is something that is critical for individuals to, if they want to be successful in whatever they do at any time, to become a good communicator is critically important. It is in business, it is in relationship, it does all the other things. So to me it has been very, very important, and I've gone through struggles about being a good communicator, self-confidence, and all the other things. And so it is something to me that has become very, very important later in life. And so I wrote a book about that. That $1 billion communication skills. And so the reason that I called it $1 billion is that will catch, how can I get people to pick up the book if they see it in the rack, for one, right? And basically what I do in this particular document is speaking more than anything about communication skills, how critically important it is. And then the reason that I called it $1 billion, because I'm showing 6 or 7 billionaires that became, it's not a book about how to become a billionaire, although it is available to anybody, but how did they become successful and why? And all of them have one thing in common. They are very, very good communicators, either acquired in some form or fashion, but in some form that became the foundation of their success and still likely is. And I felt I had to write a book about it because I believe that academically I was not a success story either. Actually, in somewhat in the contrary, actually, I grew up in northeastern Holland, born in 1940, just before the Second World War, saw far too much that we should not have seen, and subsequently was affected by PTSD and a child and a number of other things. And then when I failed grade 3, can you imagine failed grade 3? I did a presentation and about 400 or 500 people, and I sometimes bring this forward and say, I failed grade 3. Can you imagine that? And I said, I don't know anybody that did. And way in the back was a lady who said, I failed grade 3. I said, just the two of us. So, but in any event, and then I failed grade 7 3 times. And then they said, what are we going to do with this guy? My parents were beautiful people, and they said, maybe send him to a mentally challenged school. And they said, no, we're not going to do that. And so we should maybe get a trade. And my grandfather was a master carpenter, and my dad worked in lumber, and said, let's make him a furniture maker. And so obviously this was well before the time, which is relatively speaking recently, is when mental diversity issues were not even recognized. And so I was kind of referred to as John, unfortunately, is not too smart, and he will become a good laborer and all of that kind of stuff. And my friends that went with me to school, and I became a laborer at the age of 12 and a half, and they went to college and university, and I became a laborer, and I loved it, and so the other thing that happened to me is then. During the war years, we were liberated by the Canadian Army April the 12th, 1945, and it made such an impression on me during the Second World War that I knew when I grew up I would go to the land of my heroes, Canada, and I did. And then, but always I felt in myself that I was just as smart, not smarter than, as all the other ones, but I was different. So the question, who am I, was always very much part of my life. Until something happened that changed me, and I was already here in Canada, came here in 1965, July 65, started from with nothing, and then finally started building a mill and a number of other companies, and then in one time in 1997 I walked into a store here in northern BC, and I picked up a book. I got the actual, I will show it to you in a minute. I picked up a book, I still don't know why, and the book's title was Driven to Distraction, written by Dr. Halliwell, medical doctor, professor, and somebody that has written 18 books, 5 of them on distraction. This is the actual book, and as I went through this, I was standing in the store, going through this, looking at it, and finally the store owner came up and said, what are we going to do? So no, I didn't actually, but I bought the book, obviously. And the book was about ADHD and dyslexia. And I said, oh my God, that's me. And I wrote in the book here, January 1997, so I wrote in the book, and now I finally know who I am, but I wrote it in Dutch because it was still implied that it's potentially a stigma, that was negative. And so I wrote it in Dutch. And so January 1997. And then the first thing that I did, and I wanted to find out more, I never even heard about ADHD. And so I started looking at Google and did all those other things. And the more I found out about it, the more I thought, it's a superpower. Or potentially is, And then after 5 years, then already at 5 years in 67, In 1972, I went to, my doc and said, "Hey, John, why are you here?" He delivered our two daughters and was a personal friend. He said, "I think I got ADHD." And we looked at it, and I do. So there, at 62, I was diagnosed with ADHD, and saying that, can you imagine, and I'm sure you can, that from the time that I was 12 till the time that I was 62, I knew I was different, but I was always a question in my mind, who am I and why am I, and do things the way I do it. And for 50 years, and obviously then came to the conclusion was ADHD. And that book, and then becoming more informed on it, that I have ADHD and dyslexia, changed my life. And it made things much more successful for me. I became a writer. I'm working on my 6th book, and I became a presenter, and obviously podcasting and all the other kind of things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's incredible. What a story.
So bringing us back to yourself. Now, you're also a presenter. You spoke on TEDx and were quite successful. And maybe just share with our listeners about TEDx and how did you become involved in it, and explain to our listeners from around the world, what is TEDx all about?
Yeah, so basically, TEDx is a version of TED. If you've ever heard of a TED Talk, it's often referenced in pop culture and media, and it was typically something that only very, very, very well-known people would give this TED Talk, right? And still do. There's some incredible TED Talks available online, but then TED licensed basically the name, and now there's different cities around the world that do TEDx talks. So it's basically talks about big ideas. You're giving a talk about a big idea, a way of life, typically environment, education, things like that. It's a very rigorous process to be accepted to give a TEDx talk. So it was very exciting. I auditioned like everybody else for the Las Vegas. It was the first Las Vegas TEDx event. And I went through the whole process, and I did a talk about how to merge business and community to drive sales and revenue. Basically, people give back in a certain way, right? We write a check, it's a line item on an expense sheet, and you don't think of it again. But what if we thought of it differently? And what if we used our community to give back in a way that actually grew our business? And that's something that we've done at Tacotarian for years. And so I took that big idea and I talked about it on the TEDx stage in front of 400 people, and now it's online forever and so it's really exciting.
So it's on YouTube and all the other ones, and the way to access it is how?
So you can follow me on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn is just Kristen Corral, or my Instagram is the Kristen Corral, and I have the links on both those pages. It also lives on my website, which is just kristencorral.com.
So so you had no particular training in becoming a presenter. A lot of from my experience is most people feel that if they had to make, especially in front of 400 people, that they had to make a position, they sooner die than having to make a presentation. But you had a natural ability, or where did you acquire your communication skills?
So I think from an early age, because I was a performer, it's something that comes a little bit more naturally to me. Although performing, I was never speaking. I wasn't an actor or an actress. So the speaking part of it is just something that I've worked on, and I've kind of honed that skill over the course of my entrepreneurship. As you know, being in business, you often have to talk to a lot of different people, and you have to make people understand your point of view, your vision. You have to talk to your employees. You have to be a good communicator. You can't be scared of conflict. You can't be scared of communication. You have to talk to people as an entrepreneur and as a business person. So I think those skills I've kind of honed in over the last 10 to 15 years. But I do think that being a performer was extremely helpful, because it does make me a little bit more comfortable on stage. I did know what to expect standing on a stage in front of 400 people, because I've often performed in front of thousands of people. people. So that wasn't the scary part. But the scary part was actually just making sure, because for TEDx, you have to, it's line by line. It's a rehearse. It's not where you or I would go do a presentation on something else. I could just talk about marketing forever and not have to have a script. This had to be timed. It had to be scripted. It had to be approved. So I was very nervous about getting all the words out in the time allotted, and also making sure that I didn't mess up, because it was going to live on the internet forever for thousands of people to see. So it was nerve-wracking. I don't want to get up here and tell you, oh my gosh, it was nothing, it was so easy. No, it was very scary. And I worked months and months and months and months. I think I put 4 months of work into this 8-minute talk, and I rehearsed it every single day, dozens of times. I went to friends' houses. I asked other speakers to help me prepare. So I put a lot of work into this 8-minute talk, and I'm really proud of it. But that's something that also a lot of people don't realize, that as when you get to the level where you're going and giving talks and presenting and going around the world and giving speeches, there's a lot of work that goes into that. People don't just get up there and wing it, it's a lot of work.
It makes it even more of a challenge, like in my case, via ADHD and dyslexia. So if I take notes, then, and for people watching us, I was always very, very good at numbers, even when I was in grade 3 and grade 7, for all intents and purposes. And I was a strategic thinker looking forward, and I was good at writing, but not good at reading. And so obviously, because of neurodiversities that were not very well recognized, that was interpreted, and I have a great deal of respect for teachers and all the people that work with them. That is still very much a work in progress as we go forward. The educational system in Canada, likely in the United States and in Europe, from what my experience, has not fully accommodated all those issues, because maybe up to and from listening to others and talking to others about that, and experts in the field, that maybe up to 1/3 of the population have neurodiversity issues of some kind of a description, and that are not well recognized, and sometimes looked at as liabilities rather than a benefit, really, as I indicated, and I say it lightly. To me, ADHD in particular has been an asset, and I believe it's a superpower, because a lot of people say to me, how do you do all the things that you do? You go podcasting, you have 10 different companies, you're writing books and blah, blah, blah. How do you do it all? I say ADHD, that's how I do it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't know that I have ADHD. I've never been diagnosed with anything, but I have a similar way of thinking, where I can either get hyper focused or I can get hyper distracted. So you have to learn to focus in on what you have to focus in on, because right now, as I'm looking at you, I probably have 57 tabs open on my Chrome. And they're all different things. And I'll click back and forth all day long through different tabs. And I'll just say okay, I'm going to work on this for 15 minutes. And then I'm going to work on this for 15 minutes. I'm going to work on this for 15 minutes. And somehow I get most of the things done I need to get done.
Me too.
But somebody else, sometimes I'll get on a call and people will see my desktop and they will lose their mind, because they cannot fathom having 57 tabs open on Chrome at any given time. And I don't know if that's ADHD, but it's the way that my brain works, and I'm okay with that.
Sounds to me and that part is the other one that is interesting, Kristen. So what I did is, you are my podcast number 498, where I'm hosting, and then I've been guesting about another 200, 250. My podcast On the Brink number 203 is with Dr. Halliwell. Can you believe it?
Right.
So as I had my podcast with Dr. Halliwell, I suggested, he's the expert, but I live it, and so does he. Is ADHD and has dyslexia, and so as we had the discussion, initially when I picked up the book and I went through Google to figure out what is it all about ADHD, I thought maybe something 6 to 10% in that area. So, but then the further I came, and then I podcasted Dr. Halliwell, I believe I was much higher than that. So I suggested to Dr. Halliwell, in my mind, that the ADHD can be between males and females, although females present it differently than males do, it could well be around 20%. He said, no, John, it's probably more like 25% or more. And then the other thing that I found is that in all the time that I've been in business, and maybe you have the same experience, I got to know a lot of people that are very, very successful, and boards of directors, and the ones that are successful in particular, for whatever reason, I came to the conclusion and suggested that to Dr. Halliwell, is that I believe that of the successful entrepreneurs, probably up to 50% of them are ADHD. He said, no, John, probably 75%. I agree with him. So,
I mean, it is an interesting thought because your brain can move so much faster, and you can just you can think through things so much faster than other people. Like, I often will have a conversation with people and I'm like 2 steps ahead of them, and I'm like, okay, get to where I know you're getting to, because you're not there yet. And I have things to do.
And I do the same, so that was the interesting part. And sometimes what I have is that, then giving presentations, and now I'm more, that part is not all about ADHD. I talk about many, many other things, but, that comes into the conversation. And then I talk about that I failed grade 3 and then failed grade 7 3 times. And people say to me, in questions sometimes, and saying, does it still bother you, trouble you that you failed grade 7 3 times? I said, it sure does, every day. I should have quit earlier.
Right, yes,
Just
exactly.
tongue in cheek, obviously. Our system has not adjusted to neurodiversity issues, and it's a bit of a work in progress. Some of them have done more, and then I wrote a book on ADHD Unlocked. When I wrote a book more about my experience, by coincidence, I talked to a professor I was sitting in my flight, actually, from, rambling a little bit here, from Vancouver to Victoria, and you're familiar with that now. I call it, I was on my overseas flight, 12 minutes. I was sitting next to a fellow, and he said, hey, John, do you remember me? My name is, I said, I don't. He said, my name is Tom Romer. I'm the Vice President Academia of the British Columbia Institute for Technology. And I said, oh my God, yeah, I remember. He said, you were writing a book, and did you get it finished? In the book that he's referring to, Against All Odds, my first book, I said, no, I'm writing another book now, that is this one, ADHD Unlocked. And he said, oh, that's interesting. And I said, the problem that I have when I wrote this book, and when I talked to him, I was finished with the book, but what was missing in the book is saying, okay, John, interesting, where do we go from here? And that part was missing, and that's what I said to him. He said, it's interesting that you say that, because we, at the British Columbia Institute of Technology, we are dealing with, and I am in particular, he suggested, Professor Romer, is how do we go about, where do we go from here? And in particular to that issue of ADHD and focusing on that. So they called it, we are dealing with the concept of micro-certification, suggesting that if you have to learn a certain skill sets that are broad in all kinds of other issues, the actual issue of the skill sets, if it is 4 years, is probably only 6 months.
Yeah.
And rather than making the other side things critical importance to being successful, the focus is on the actual micro-certification and make the other one additives. I'm not saying that you should not have that, but not the critical ones. And so they're looking at that particular concept as one that would make all of that more successful, in particular as it relates to the mental diversity issues with individuals, but also in a more general sense.
Yeah, in a general sense, because most people don't need a 4-year degree to do whatever they end up doing. Most people don't use their 4-year degree. And like you went to a trade school, right? And that's kind of a dying thing, but trade schools are still very much important. We're losing trade skilled people that we desperately need. So those need to be focused, hyper focused on. And people should look at doing maybe a trade school. I do not regret not going to college one bit. I don't think that college would have been for me. I think I could have been successful and that's fine, but I didn't need it. I'm much happier doing what I do now. And I don't think college would have given me anything else that I couldn't learn in like the school of life. The other thing I often tell other entrepreneurs is that we are so fortunate right now to live in a time where you can learn anything you want on the internet for free, literally anything. So use that, benefit from that, learn all of the things that you want to learn online right now.
I agree with you. And so that's exactly what is happening is that if I look at it, how much did I learn in my training, education, if you wish, from the time I was 12 and a half and started working with my hands, became a furniture maker. Then from there on in, went to Canada, started with absolutely nothing. When I came, I wanted to start from nothing because I had to prove to me that I was just as smart as any of the other ones. And so I left Holland with a suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, very little money, flew into Montreal, took the train across Canada, 5 days, 4 nights. My God, that is a long way. And then in Vancouver, could speak the English, didn't know a soul, didn't have a job, and went to the immigration department, and there was a German fellow I could speak some German. I told him what I wanted to do is start a lumber mill, and he said, "Go to Central British Columbia to Prince George." And that's where they're building sawmills and all the other things. So I went down here, I came off the bus here, and if I look outside, I can still see where the Greyhound station is. And since that time, I travel all over North America a lot, but here is one of my studios where I podcast from. And so I stepped out of the Greyhound bus in July of 1965, and I had my suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and I counted my money at least 3 times. I had $25.47. But attitude, I've always been positive. No matter what happens, even now, stay away from me if it is not positive. Every day to me is a good day. And passion, whatever I do, I give it 125%. And work ethic, even now, I work harder than anybody. I get up at 5:30, always make my bed, and always think I'm late. And and still now, after all of that and going all through it, my best education period was becoming a laborer and becoming a furniture maker. That helped me again when I came to Canada and learned all the things, starting from the bottom up, clean up man, lumber pilot, all of those things the hard way. And the experience is invaluable compared to what I did. I had to improve on my communication skills. I did. Went to an organization called Toastmasters. We can do a whole segment about that. But I improved my communication skills, and then obviously successful. And then the question, who am I, was because coincidental. Finding this book told me that and saying it's a superpower. And then, but who am I took me a long time to get there. And fortunately, because of being a vegetarian or being conscientious about diet, mainly green, and then has been a help to me. And then going to the gym and quality of life has been, and that now is the most important part in my life is diet, exercise, staying physically active, mentally active. There's only you only have one body. Treat it well. It is immensely forgiving, but not for continued abuse. And stay away from toxicity in terms of hands full of medicine that is supposed to be fixing things, but in a lot of cases, respectfully, they are not. And if you can do it with exercise, diet, and be careful about your body,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've been vegetarian. I started vegetarian in 2011. And then I eventually went vegan years after that. And for me, it's been really well. I know a lot of people say like, oh, I can't do it, or it's this or it's that. But I think even choosing to eat healthier meals a few times a week is better than nothing. You know, like work your way up. I always tell people like do meatless Monday, start there. Do, you know, whatever. Choose Taco Tuesday with Tacotarian food on Tuesday. You can get there. You'll be okay.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting, Kristen, that you say that. I usually do all the shopping, and then last weekend in Victoria, I was in the store, and I bought our groceries for the week, and so as I did, the lady that was checking me out and saying, "Where is the meat?" She said, "Are you vegetarian?" I said, "We are," you know. So, and I said, to "Just keep us healthy." But it was kind of interesting that they noticed it. But just
It
like
is
you
weird.
said, start it out gradually, easy. Same with working out. You know, go start. You don't have to become an Olympian or a bodybuilder. Or I'm the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America, but you don't have to go there. You know, that keep active with your body, and then the amazing thing is what will happen then, and diet combined, is that at some point as you go gradually forward, exercise and diet, somebody will say, "Hey, Kristen or John, you look good. What are you doing?" And that sort of thing, and that encourages others. And somebody that says, "Well, it takes time, but start gradually and carefully."
Yeah. And I think too, that's one of the reasons that I feel so passionately about our restaurants is that it's much easier to show people how good something is or how delicious or easy it is to eat that way than it is to tell them. Like if I tell you like, oh, you should be vegetarian or you should be vegan because it's good for you, people are going to go, meh. But if you invite people into a restaurant and serve them food and they're like, wow, this food is so great. These are the best tacos I've ever had. And you say, oh yeah, by the way, those were made from plants, you're going to blow their mind in a way that they wouldn't have been open to if you had told them before, you know?
Exactly. And then the other part, Kristen, is since you're such an example of entrepreneurship, is that, you know, if you start, how do you, of the people that are watching us, male and female, but in particular also females, is saying that how do you develop that entrepreneurial understanding, and people that don't want to follow the academic ladder upward, but how do you develop the skill sets that you have developed by being on stage for 10 years, and which gave you confidence, but especially in a lot of cases, what I find in presentations that I do to young people in particular, that you know, they are so preoccupied the way, this male and female, of what do I wear, what I do here, and myself being one of them, not having confidence, is saying there is only one of you on this earth, and you are special. And so not more special than others, but do not, you are special as to who you are, and don't be overly preoccupied about all the other things as what other people think or believe, but have that confidence. And then in terms of entrepreneurship that you were blessed with in such an amazing way already from an early age, how do you encourage male and female, but in particular female as well, to start on ideas that they may have and doing the same as you do? How do they trigger? But I always say success is trying to find you. How do they become ready for saying, I always wanted to do this, and how do you trigger that idea of that I can
Yeah.
do it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think anyone is capable of doing this truly if you want to do it. That's the thing. You have to want to put in the work. This is not something like, yes, I'm here talking to you. I'm on a podcast. Isn't this fun? But this isn't the majority of what I'm doing with my day. Most of my day consists of doing really hard work, late nights, early mornings. It's a lot of work. So you have to be willing to make sacrifices in your personal life to get to the level of entrepreneurship. And that is not for everyone, and that is okay. But you have to be willing. You have to have a good idea. First of all, you have to make sure it's a good idea. Test it first. Test it with your inner circle. Test it with people that you trust and that will give you legitimate feedback. You have to have no people in your life. If you surround yourself with yes people, you will fail. I have a very fantastic husband, but he's okay with telling me no when I'm wrong. And you have to have, and I have family members that do the same. You have to have those people. You have to know your strengths and your weaknesses. Like you, I'm a vision person. I'm not an execution person. I need people around me that can execute my ideas, because I am not that person, because I get distracted. I have a million different ways I can do it. So you have to know your strengths. If you're a really good cook, that doesn't mean you're going to be a really good restaurateur. It means that you could be if you surround yourself with the right people. You need an operations person. You need an HR person. You need this. You need a marketing person. You can't be all things at all times. So learning those things about yourself and really understanding your strengths and your weaknesses is what's going to help you excel.
And then the other part, you touched on it, and you're blessed to have that success part, is that a lot of people think that if you're in business, that what you do mainly is bring money to the bank and plan holidays. I say no, it's just the opposite. And so you must have good partnership or people in your life that are supportive, because it can become very taxing on relationships and times, and to have that is critical. And then as you go forward,
Yeah, it's definitely not like people think of like all the fun stuff. I did an Instagram reel one time where it's like, this is what people think I'm doing. And it was like me talking and me doing this and me doing that. And I was like, this is not what it's actually like, dealing with, the police because somebody broke in and ruined our entire restaurant. It's like, waking up on it's like the craziest stuff we have to deal with as entrepreneurs on a day-to-day that people would never imagine. And so like, exactly. You have to be okay with making sacrifices.
Kristen, for all the people watching us, give us once more the name of your restaurant and then your contact online. How can people follow you? And then at the same time, for people watching us that subscribe to our podcast, both Kristen's and mine, like it if you like it, and share it with others, and make comments on it, and saying, okay, we like what you're doing and we want to follow you and subscribe to your podcast. So before we go, let us know once more, what are you doing? How can they contact you? And the name again of your restaurant.
Yeah, so for the restaurant, it's Tacotarian, and you can find us at eattacotarian.com or at eattacotarian on all the socials. For me personally, you can go to kristencorral.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn, just Kristen-Corral, or the Kristen Corral on Instagram.
Kristen, it was an amazing podcast. I appreciate having you on my podcast. The next time in Las Vegas, I'm going to certainly go to your restaurant, and I will love it and like it, because the direction is quality of life, and that includes diet, critically understanding that part very, and it's very, very tasteful, very likable. So I'm encouraging others to go the direction of food-based, plant-based diets, and and staying physically active. Kristen, it was a privilege. My podcast will be released. I don't edit my podcast. It is what it is, and I release it within 2 hours.
Okay. Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Kristen. And let's make sure we stay in touch.
Yes, for sure.
Thanks, Kristen. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.